Hi, my name is Christo Benz and welcome to this presentation on mixed reality and its application in education. First of all, we will be looking at the definition of what we mean when we talk about mixed reality. We'll have a brief look at timeline and we'll do a bit of a deep dive on the investigation on application, challenges, limitations, equity as it relates to mixed reality. First of all, the definitions. Virtual reality. Virtual reality, as defined by the Virtual Reality Society, is the term used to describe a three-dimensional computer-generated environment which can be explored in and interacted with by a person. Augmented reality. Augmented reality is an enhanced version of the physical real-world reality of which elements are superimposed by computer-generated or extracted real-world sensory input such as sound, video, graphics, and haptics. Mixed reality then is a particular subset of virtual reality related technologies that involve the merging of real and virtual worlds somewhere along the virtuality continuum, which connects completely real environments to completely virtual ones. Looking at a brief history, in 1968, Ivan Sutherland developed the world's first head-mounted display. In 1974, Myron Kruger built the world's first artificial reality laboratory known as Video Place. In 1990, Tom Cordell coined the term augmented reality. In 1992, Louis Rosenberg developed virtual fixtures, which allowed the users to interact with mechanical devices in virtual space. In 1994, Julie Martin produced the first augmented reality theater production known as Dancing in Cyberspace. In 1999, the US Navy Research Laboratory developed Battlefield Augmented Reality System, or BARS, which superimposed digital objects on a real-world environment. Jumping ahead to 2013, Toyota launches Marta, which was the first mobile augmented reality technical assistant, which helped engineers when working on vehicle engines and vehicle parts. In 2014, Google launched Google Glass, effectively launching augmented reality into everyday households and businesses. And then finally, in 2018, Microsoft launched HoloLens, which combined head-mounted displays and computational power into a single unit display and computer. Moving now to the in-depth discussion about the application, advantages, challenges of mixed reality. First of all, the applications. The main categories include AR books. AR books superimposes digital objects and characters from books, and as the student reads the book, the characters come to life and the objects come to life within the book itself. Then AR gaming has an application in the military and in the private sector, as well as allowing users to interact with games through virtual reality / augmented reality. Discovery-based learning allows students to not only manipulate the digital objects in augmented space, but allows them to access additional information by accessing internets or data sources that is related to the objects that they are manipulating. Object modeling allows for the superimposing of digitized objects over their real-world counterparts, and also allows the user to separate these separate parts to get a better understanding of the structure of the object. And then skills development, skills training. Once again, we're looking at the military application, but very much in the commercial industry. Training such as communication training can be done in virtual space. And then lastly, the newcomer to the discussion on virtual reality is the idea of virtual reality or cyber classrooms, where students from all over the world join each other in cyberspace with their teacher or an expert, irrespective of where their physical uh, locations are. Then looking at advantages, research has shown that students' enjoyment and satisfaction for learning increases. The rate at which they understand even complex concepts in subjects like STEM subjects are increased. Their attention and focus to the task at hand is also increased. Their creativity is empowered, and it facilitates even more creative thinking, creative problem solving. And then motivation through the immersion of virtual reality, the motivation for learning has also seen to increase during research. And then, of course, outflow is that generally the academic performance increases, and that is directly linked to enjoyment and motivation that has increased. Then finally, as I've already mentioned, cyber classrooms or virtual reality classrooms allows students to interact with experts wherever they are in the world, but also a lot of the boundaries that prevents learning is dismantled, like the boundaries for teacher and student role definitions allow students to participate and collaborate much better. Then lastly, over time, the cost of presenting learning through MR, a mixed reality approach, has shown to fall below that of the more traditional approaches to training, especially in the areas of STEM subjects. Moving on to challenges. Learning process. How well does the new technology fit into the current students' learning process? Obviously, some training and guidance is needed for students to absorb and to integrate this new technology, this new mixed reality technology into their everyday learning. Reliability, of course, with all new technologies, there's always the problem of reliability, especially in virtual reality, mixed reality, where connectivity between devices, connectivity to the internet is essential for the correct operation of these solutions. And if any of this becomes unstable or it cannot be continued, the learning environment is disrupted. Resistance, with everything that change, there'll always be resistance from teachers, even administrators, that struggles with the paradigm shift that is required from the more traditional safe teaching method to a more technology orientated approach. Then synchronicity, pressures from the government, from school authorities, of teachers having to deliver certain curriculum content within timeframes. In short, there is just not enough time to introduce new concepts such as mixed reality. Then also instructional flow, even where teachers are willing to adopt a new technology like mixed reality, there is always the problem of exactly how does it fit into the lesson flow. Where does traditional instruction stop? Where does MR start? And how does the transition work between the two? So a reasonable planning is needed to achieve this. And then finally, the issue of content. Although content for virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality is increasing dramatically over the past 5 years, there is still a problem, concerns about the inflexibility of the content to be adapted to the lesson, and often the lesson has to be adapted to the content. Then moving on to limitations. As with all new technologies, there are some technical issues, especially around GPS errors, surface recognition, which prevents the projection of digitized virtual objects against um, real world background. Then ability restrictions, of course, this applies to both the teacher and the student. Very often, even more so, um, more involved virtual reality, mixed reality solutions are not really suited for younger students and is more aimed at more advanced older students. However, a strategy of building up capability is probably sound, starting from a more simplistic scenario where younger students access augmented reality via something like a smartphone. Then intrusiveness of the device. Although devices are much smaller than they used to be, the problem of wearing something, holding something in your hand like a smartphone, having something on your head like a head-mounted display can interfere with the natural flow of a teacher's presenting of training. Content availability, once again, although tools do exist, once again, it needs a special level of technical capability to develop teacher-owned material. And of course, the time aspect is of importance as well. And then learning confusion, probably very common with new technology. Sometimes the technology becomes the subject of the learning rather than the subject content that it is in trying to support. And then lastly, cognitive overload. As you can imagine, students are presented with a lot of information together with the interaction with technology and devices that they might not be familiar with, might lead them to a situation where they have cognitive overload, and this could negatively impact their learning capability. Right, moving on to policies and guidelines. The policies really, we can break them down into enabling policies, protective policies. Let's look at enabling policies. Now, Australia has a really comparatively uncomplicated, realistic, and pragmatic vision on ITC use, aims to cultivate an optimistic attitude with students and teachers towards the use of ICT in education, and then also this drive for specific technical training and the understanding of the necessity of ICT in society. Some examples of the simplistic or realistic and pragmatic vision of ICT from Victoria State. Schools need to use digital technology as an integral component of their learning and teaching programs safely and responsibly. And then for in Queensland, the Queensland government will provide educators new ways to engage and excite learners, extending and enriching learning in a safe way. This then brings us to the protective policies. Now, with new tech, with all as with other technologies that's connected to the internet, that's global, there is the risk of hacking, data loss, identity theft, content defacement, denial of service attacks, virus attacks, negative social interactions such as cyberbullying. However, because of um, the immersiveness of the MR technology, the type of reactions that students could have to these protect these security risks can be quite big. Occasions have occurred where hackers have attacked patients with epilepsy through flashing bright lights in their faces, and even used loud sounds to disrupt interaction with children with autism. Now, having said that, most of these policies that are generic ICT security policies um, can easily solve this problem, and it really comes down to the behavior of the person itself that's using the technology. Right, moving on to the guidelines, or more specifically, the Australian curriculum. Now, the Australian curriculum has built into it the ICT capabilities, technical capabilities, which requires students to use ICT to investigate, create, be creators, use ICT for communication, manage their own learning. ICT needs to support specific learning areas, and then, of course, the whole area of social and ethical protocols. Now, on the investigation side, we've already highlighted how by linking objects in augmented reality to the internet, more information can be gathered. The reality provides students with an extremely creative way of analyzing and solving even complicated problems. Then communicate through the likes of VR classrooms, managing learning through specific subject-specific MR solutions. And then lastly, social and ethical. The whole MR technology introduces a totally brand new way of in which students can learn how to behave in a socially and ethically correct way when using ICT technology. Right, moving on to equity. We're looking at students with disability, lower income socioeconomic groups, English as an additional language students, and then Indigenous Australian communities or cultures in general. Training programs are available where that allows students with disabilities like autism to be trained in social skills, technical skills, and even be used for rehabilitation training. Research has shown that augmented reality education games, when used in foreign language learning, can yield positive results and reduce foreign language learning anxiety. It is interesting to note that a number of elders from Indigenous Australian communities have participated in virtual reality or mixed reality projects. Example is the virtual dreaming simulating everyday life of the Darug people, where elders participated in generating a virtual reality content that can be accessed by students. Then unfortunately, I think social economics is always of importance. Now, although the cost of devices and technology has dropped significantly, the cost is still for a number of schools, especially those schools in lower economic, socioeconomic communities, lower income socioeconomic communities, preventing them from providing even a rudimentary level of MR to their students. Now, this discussion is not trying to solve this problem, but it will echo Dr. Southgate, Dr. Smith, and Mr. Cheers' sentiment. This is a call for all those involved in education to act now. Educators and students alike need to dream up, sandpit, prototype, create proof of concept, and rigorously apply existing and emerging technologies as tools to ensure fairer education outcomes and futures. And I do believe if we focus on this problem, that even the cost of the technology will not be a barrier that's too high to overcome. Right, then in conclusion, as we've seen, MR is here to stay. There are challenges and limitations. The MR's benefit in education is undeniable. Australia has adopted policies to encourage the use of emerging technologies such as MR. Technology studies is ingrained in the Australian curriculum. Security and physical risks exist, but they're not insurmountable. Um, MR technology is not cheap. However, there there are programs afoot to see how that could be addressed. Uh, Mixed reality is a viable teaching tool for students with disabilities and English as a additional language, and MR can assist cultures to expose others to their history, as we've shown through the project. And just a final thought. Irrespective of whether we end up in the holodecks on the Starship Enterprise or plugged into the Matrix, it should be clear that educators have no choice but to take the first cautious steps to explore the wonderful new world of mixed reality education. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this talk on mixed reality applications in education. I do hope you have a very nice day.